Players, then there's Phil Brown, that catchy Meek.
Phil Brown tears it up.
Blown away by him.
Not just some white guy.
Phil, man, we don't know what to do with him.
Once in a while, you meet a guitar player who is incredibly unique in both sound and soul. I met Phil Brown at a guitar festival in Copper Mountain, Colorado. He agreed to do an interview with me in Anaheim, California. This is his story.
I think my first influence was Walt Disney. I always had amazing music because I remember seeing this little cartoon. So the priest that married my father and mother knew of a young boy who needed to be adopted. And my original name was Steve. I look like a Steve. So my parents had a banjo that they got when I was about 4.5 or 5, and had on it a cheater, a box that fit up to the 3rd fret with keys on it. You could press the keys and make chords, you know, E minor, C, G, D, A minor, E, or about 7 chords. And I got a pretty good right hand doing that. And I didn't have picks, I used bread picks, you know, the clasps around the bread. My mom would just give them to me by the 5 or 6, sometimes at the end of a week. The same year I was in 3rd grade, I began dancing. I played in a school play, and I was a guy that swept up something. And somehow the play was supposed to be not so serious, but I made a couple of funny moves, and there was applause and laughing. Wow, I want to do this. You know, you got to do something that was outside of yourself. So it was a very formative time. I remember being 7, 8 years old and going show and tell. I brought my guitar and played Swanee River, and the kids were just mesmerized. I was too. I'd been studying classical violin from 6 to, say, 13. I didn't like it much. I couldn't vibrato. You know, the violin player, I would go to the side. It just sounded better, and it was immediate. And I didn't know how to do the other. My parents had an extensive record collection of Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. Didn't really have jazz. No real blues, but this contemporary thing was in America at the time. And of course I had Beatles. I didn't buy Beatle records. Those were for the sissy guys. The Beatles were still going strong when you heard "It's Been a Hard," and we'd go crazy, and Paul would scream, shake his head, and I'll never forget watching Ed Sullivan. And we came to school the next day, all of us completely freaked out about what they did, and they were going to be at Ed Sullivan the next week down in Florida. You can't imagine the effect they had, because we'd never heard anything like that. So there were a couple of seminal songs. "You Really Got Me" was one. I remember going to get that record, and they had that English, you know, Tudor suits on, and it's just, I didn't know that Jimmy Page had played guitar on this stuff, and The Who had come on with My Generation with a bass solo to this day, still just kills me. Okay, what's this got to do with music? When I heard The Who, people try to put us down, can buy much, because we can get around. And I had this jungle kind of rhythm with this drummer that was totally out of control, with the bass player playing as loud as the guitar player, playing the lead lines, playing with his fingers. And by the time they got to the solo, I went, holy moly, I want this. That revolution changed me. Well, this is before Hendrix and Cream. I still had a real diet with the Yardbirds that come out with their first record, and Jeff Beck had like a Striped. And both he and Clapton had played on this record. I didn't know all the history, but they were my favorite band. If you were a male and you played guitar, you wanted to learn how to play like the Yardbirds. Unbeknownst to a lot of us, Jimmy Page played on literally hundreds of recordings. Played on the Who records too, because a lot of the bands, they didn't know how to play. And the bass player, outside of John Entwistle, was the bass player for John Paul Jones, who could orchestrate horns, and it was just an unusual thing. And there's something about English recordings that take you, I want this. It wasn't American. There were maybe a couple of American bands I loved. One in particular was the Moby Grape. And I loved the Doors because that Jim Morrison just had a thing. Yes, I liked Motown and Stax, and there was just some incredible music going on. Aretha Franklin used to just kill me. Stevie Wonder, I was made to love her at 12 years old, playing that big harmonium, and he would play, I'm just never, and he's blind, I just can't believe any of it be that good. But music just brought all this together for me. It started me on the road that have been on, and I'm 62. So I've been in the middle of this for a lot of years. Pretty happy I've stayed with this. It's the only thing I've ever done I couldn't lie about. You know, when you're a guy and you want to do really good and the boat kind of misses you, you make up a lot of stories. But in music, you can't do that because everyone knows when you're telling the truth. This is really important. You should never give up on your dream. Your dream is really chasing you. And if you're a guitarist, go back and listen to all those blues guys. If you're a singer, study the singers who learned how to phrase, had great songs that were conversational. Listen to a lot of classical music. Pick out your favorite rock bands that happened in the 60s before it got so homogenized. Study the way they play. Say yes a lot more. Care a lot more. Give a rat's behind a lot less. Try not to criticize, condemn, or complain about what's going on. Use everything to make you better.